Welcome back with Murdock from Murdock's Music Minute.
Hello.
One of my favorite YouTube channels that try to do the same as I do, but probably does it much better than me. So it's kind of an honor to talk to the legend that is Murdock.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Two channels clashing here, and we are back with Battle of the Bands of 30 years ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 30 years ago, two iconic albums came out. In April '94, Blur came out with Parklife, and I think when this came out, they thought, well, now we're the biggest band in Britain and no one will touch us for years. And it must have felt very frustrating when in late August, another band came and stole the crown from Blur. Oasis came out with Definitely Maybe, the debut album. So this was maybe even back then, that was already the start. These were the seeds of the battle of Britpop in '95, which was, with hindsight, a silly thing, a childish thing. But back then, and I was already into Oasis and Blur also. Back then it was very exciting in a way, especially when you're young and you're still silly yourself. So I enjoyed the battle of Britpop. Nowadays, I think, was this really a good thing?
Yeah, it was a big thing, probably hard to imagine nowadays what the fuss was all about. And I was still in school. I was neither into Oasis nor into Blur back in the day, but of course we followed all the
What was your
Yeah,
music
I was a slow adapter. I was still very much in the 60s, listening to the Beatles, of course, and some psychedelic music from the 60s, classic rock like Led Zeppelin, so a hopeless case. And a friend came with the Oasis album, and there was a girl in our class who was always into the new hot things, and she came with Blur, and I wasn't.
And you fell in love.
I wasn't into either of the albums.
It was a bit the same with me, in the sense that I was a big 60s fan already, a big Beatle fan, I think from the early 90s on, and I had already finished with modern music by the time I was 10 years old, so I wasn't interested.
You were an old soul.
Yeah, I wasn't interested in the charts, and when you're 10 or 11 years old, which was like 1993, 1994, you're not really yet into indie music, you don't really know much about that whole cosmos. So this was like my entry in '94, '95, Oasis, Blur. I was aware of Nirvana and of grunge, but I never liked it. There were people in school who liked Nirvana and the grunge bands, but I thought I should like it since I'm such a fan of 60s music like you. But it was too nihilistic, too depressing, and I wanted to have fun in those
I didn't get
times. So Britpop was the thing for me when it came. It was like, wow, this sounds a bit like those bands. It's clearly inspired by the Beatles and the Kings and the Who and so on. Plus, it's a positive music, which was the vibe that I wanted to. I wanted pop music to make me happy, or to be exciting. And plus, this was also, like I said, the kind of entry into more indie taste in music, especially in Austria, because in Britain, I think very soon these bands became massive mainstream acts. So this was like mainstream, and indie snobs very soon after these albums came out would say, Blur, Oasis, the mainstream sellout bands. But to us in Austria, you have to understand, or in many countries outside of Britain, those were indie bands. If these albums charted on the continent, it was like 1 week number 30 or 40 or something, and not 1 year number 1 and 2. So those were like indie albums, I would say, and 60s inspired indie albums, and I fell totally in love with both groups in the beginning. And of course, there's one of those two groups that I'm more. That's more my. something I can identify with, and then maybe there's also for you one of those two groups that you can identify with more.
Probably is.
Maybe it's the same band. The thing is, we just met for the second time now to record this video, and we met like 1 or 2 weeks ago and drank 1 cup of coffee together and to plan this, if you can call it planning, just to get introduced to each other. So I don't really know much about you, and so this is really very exciting to me to find out what you think about these albums. Maybe you don't even like those albums, but you suggested the video, so I guess you like these albums.
It was the great YouTube conspiracy in a small cafe in Vienna.
Yeah.
So why are we talking about these 2 albums? I think it's justified to say they are iconic. They celebrate their 30th anniversary this year, and let's find out whether they still have any value. So why are we still talking about these albums today? I think it's justified to say they are in some way iconic. They celebrate their 30th anniversary this year, and I hope it will be fun for us and for you to find out in what way they are still relevant, or maybe the final verdict is that they are just a product of their times.
Yeah, and maybe the best way to do this would be track versus track, we thought.
Yeah.
That would be a good idea, we hope.
It's the ultimate revival of Blur versus Oasis in 2024.
Yeah, and I don't know where your allegiances lie, so it will be surprising. Let's start with it. Without much further ado, so we will compare each track to each track, and on the Blur album there are 16 tracks, and on the Oasis album there's only 11 tracks. So we will cut I call them non-songs, I don't mean it disrespectful, but they're those like fillery
short interludes.
Interludes, The Debt Collector, Far Out. I personally like Far Out. I like Sid Barrett, and this is like the Sid Barrett's
There's a bit of
moment.
Yes, an homage to.
But it's a 1 minute song, so we'll cut this from this versus Blur versus Oasis thing, and lot 105, which is like the Her Majesty, the punk rock Her Majesty, and we will cut this too. Then Blur will have 13 instead of 16 tracks. And Oasis still have 11, so we will also add the vinyl-only track Sad Song, which was only on the vinyl version, and I think on the Japanese CD. And we will also add Whatever, which was just a single, but it was, right after Definitely Maybe came out. Definitely Maybe came out in late August '94, and Whatever came out in December '94, so it's part of the Definitely Maybe era, I would say. So the first tracks are Rock and Roll Star versus Girls and Boys. I don't think it gets much more iconic in terms of great Britpop anthems. So Murdock, what's your verdict?
Yes, both of these tracks are indeed iconic, but they are, I think, this already shows how completely different both bands are. Rock and Roll Star says it all in the title. It's a pure rock and roll song. Loud guitars. It's also about being a rock and roll star, and I mean, I
think it's about the aspiration to become a rock and roll star. I think those still early Noel Gallagher songs. The thing that's so great about the early Noel Gallagher songs is that they're from the perspective of someone, on the dole, someone who doesn't have a job or doesn't want to work. There's even this line in Cigarettes and Alcohol about it. Someone who's even beyond working class in a way, who's the underclass. That's another song on the album suggests, who wants to become a rock and roll star, and it's a big fantasy. And I think that's the romantic thing. That's the thing that many people especially me, could identify with. The aspiration, and once they achieved it, it became a bit silly. It was also the reason why on later albums the lyrics became so stale and lacking any depth and any deeper meaning. I would say, but Rock and Roll Star is still Noel Gallagher in his I want to be a rock and roll star.
Yes, it's hedonism in terms of as you said, being on the dole, not having a great outlook for the future, but tonight I'm going to be a rock and roll star. So they don't give a care, it's pure hedonism. Girls and Boys is also about hedonism, but in a bit of a different, they're coming from a different angle there.
But Damon Albarn once said it's not like he's judging it.
Right.
I think he was on holiday, it's about holiday in Greece,
Yeah.
but he was on holiday in Spain, and there's the quote with Justine from Elastica, which was his girlfriend at the time, which he took her from Brett Anderson, from Suede. But they were in Spain on holiday, and Damon experienced the things, in his fantasy kind of experienced the things, the hedonism that the song is about, and he said, I don't judge it, it's not like this is a bad thing morally, or it's a good thing, it's just a description of that, Girls and Boys, about, I think it's also, it plays into this rave culture, or Eurodance.
I would say so, yeah.
Musically, ecstasy, taking ecstasy, and it's about that kind of hedonism. Lots of beer, maybe also. Yeah. So this is also a party song, but more from the observer perspective, which is the Blur thing in general on these albums. Also, Great Escape and Modern Life is Rubbish. This Ray Davies thing, and this is also maybe something that Oasis fans or in general Blur haters criticized about the group, that it's like cartoons of people and maybe a bit shallow, a bit superficial, that it's not really, it doesn't feel like experiences Damon himself had. I don't know, maybe he had those experiences, maybe not, but critics often say it's less honest than Oasis. Oasis are always the rock and roll band, the honest rock and roll band, which is also, of course, a cliche and not true. It's also a myth, of course. Yeah. But Blur are more like writing about third-person songs. This is more like the John Lennon. I write about myself, about my feelings, stuff, and this is more the Paul McCartney. I write about. Like Paperback Writer.
Characters.
Characters.
They made up what they observed, or I think Ray Davies is quite a good reference.
For this album and also for this track, I would say especially. And this is maybe one of the influences both bands also in this phase, one of the few influences they really had in common, the Kings. I think the Kings are maybe influencing Oasis more musically, and they're influencing Blur musically and lyrically. This album, I would say. Yeah. Of course, there's also the track Dixie's Dinner, and it maybe is also a bit of a Ray Davies character study. No, not really, because it's about a real person, but we'll get to this song later. Yeah. And I also wanted to say about Rock and Roll Star, one final word about Rock and Roll Star before we make our verdict, which song wins. You're right, when I thought about it, you're probably right that it's also about being a rock and roll star, not just aspiring to be one. I think that's the Liam factor. I think the way Liam, and this is also another example of the dynamic between Liam and Noel. Noel meant it as a song, as a dream about being a rock and roll star, but the way Liam sings it, he already believes he's a big rock and roll star. He maybe believes it his whole life.
It's the old saying, if you want to become a rock star, you have to behave like a rock star.
Fake it till you make it.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. So, and Girls and Boys is Ray Davies going to a 90s club, more or less. Yeah. So, verdict. Yeah, personally, if you'd asked me several years ago, I would have gone for Rock and Roll Star because it's a great rock and roll track. Over the years, I started to prefer Girls and Boys, to be honest. It's got a funky bass line, it's a bit quirky, like a lot on this album, and over the years it started to speak to me more.
Alex James, the bass player of Blur, said it's a Duran Duran bass line. He tried to play like Duran Duran, whatever the name of the bass player of Duran. I hate Duran Duran, it's one of the worst 80s bands, I think.
Yeah, but listen to their bass lines.
They're probably the best thing about them. So your point goes to Girls and Boys?
My point goes to Girls and Boys by a small margin. It's really a close shave between those two songs.
I'm kind of the Oasis fan, maybe more the Oasis fan than you, and maybe you're more the Blur fan, I don't know yet, but I'm clearly more the Oasis fan, but it's a clear win for Girls and Boys for me. This is one of the clearest victories in this whole battle, I think, for me. Girls and Boys to me is one of the 5 best Blur songs. Maybe it's the best Blur song in a way. It's not the one that touches me most, making party, binge drinking is not like inspiring me for anything, but it's one of the most perfectly written songs where the Blur DNA, it's the best. If you want to find out about the Blur DNA, at least in this phase, Girls and Boys is maybe the best crafted song.
It's one of the best singles, and it's quintessentially 90s.
Yeah, and I love Rock and Roll Star. As an Oasis-Fan, I have to love Rock and Roll Star. I would lose my members card as a fan of Oasis if I say I didn't love Rock and Roll Star. But if I'm honest, it's a bit too long. And the second verse is the first verse repeated. It's just something that in the Be Here Now phase and later on would be on almost every Oasis song. Here it starts that you wouldn't have needed a second verse if it's exactly the same, and the outro is too long for my taste. So this point is a clear winner. For both of us. Cool. So next song, Shaker Maker versus Tracy Checks. What's your opinion of these tracks?
Yeah, Shaker Maker is a nice example of what this album for me is about, and it's pure attitude. It's all about attitude, whereas Parklife can be seen or maybe also criticized as being, look how smart we are. It's more about being smart, maybe also both in the lyrics and in the music. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Whereas, definitely maybe is about attitude. And that was quite a bold thing to do for a debut. We have to keep in mind this was the 3rd album for Blur, so they were already a little bit established. I mean, they had to find themselves, their sound still. And I think that's what they did with Parklife. They finally arrived at the sound, but they already had more or less an established team also with their producer. This was the first time Oasis really went into the studio. So
the second time, because
they had to re-record most of it. I never heard the original sessions.
Well, Slide Away is the only survivor from the Dave Batchelor sessions. But Shaker Maker was re-recorded like most of the tracks. I think Shaker Maker was the second single. I think it came out in June or July, probably June '94. The second single, Supersonic, was the first, and I think it's probably the worst single A-side of Oasis of the '90s. Maybe I think I prefer Roll With It to it, but Roll With It and Shaker Maker would be the bottom of the single A-sides, which just shows how strong the singles. Also B-sides, but also A-sides were at the time. It's still I'm not even sure if I would say it's still a great song. I think it was a single, but it's still one of the weaker tracks to me personally on the album. It's a bit, I think this is one of the few songs where there's a Lars influence. Noel Gallagher always talked about how much the Lars were an influence on him, but I think it's only really apparent to me on Shaker Maker. It's like electrified Lars to me. And it's a good song, and the lyrics are interesting. It's something different from we were talking all the time about Oasis, the honest rock and roll group, and Blur, the more cynical character study, clever student guys. But Shaker Maker is a very surreal song. It's a bit like the I'm the Walrus tradition almost, for Oasis at least. And that's interesting to make something different for them. But it's not, I think it's a bit overrated by some Oasis fans, I would say. And on the other hand, Tracy Checks, what's your opinion on Tracy Checks?
Tracy Checks, interesting track. To me, the hero here is Graham Coxon. And this was one of the aspects I didn't like about Blur when I first heard them, because I came from this still very melodic stuff from the 60s and classic rock, and then you hear Blur with those almost dissonant chords sometimes. the solos are more or less anti-solos on some of the tracks. This is something that I enjoy a lot now. I think they were also partly inspired by early XTC, maybe on some of these tracks. It goes into an art punk direction.
Yeah.
I don't think Tracy Checks ever has been a single, or has it?
No, it was no single.
Yeah, it was no single. To me, it would have had the potential to be a single, actually. I enjoy it a lot.
It probably was in some markets a single. I'm not sure. I know what the four British singles were, and it wasn't one of those, but there was a fifth single for like France or Japan or something like that. And it could have, it's possible that it's Tracy Checks. And I agree with you, it could have been a single if it wasn't a single. I think it's
strangely catchy.
I think it's a great song.
Yeah.
Again, it's the Ray Davies. The thing that one could criticize Damon for doing a bit second-rate Ray Davies character study.
Definitely.
I mean, who is Tracy Checks? What's it really about? What's that life
this
is
nervous
about?
This nervous breakdown from a boring job, maybe.
I never really understood, what the plot of the story is. Those are like story songs, but they don't really get to a point. It's like The Big Lebowski as a pop song. I love The Big Lebowski as a movie, but it's also these songs that go nowhere in a way. Something that you also could say about some Oasis songs. Yeah. But again, for me, it's a win for Blur. I'm the big Oasis fan, but it's 2-0.
2-0 for Blur. For me
no.
as well, even though I like Shaker Maker, I wouldn't say it's a weak single, but maybe it drags a bit.
Compared to the other singles.
It drags a bit, maybe.
Still better than any song that Shed said.
Which is
like that ever made.
For me, now that I re-listened to both of these albums, and I was actually surprised how plodding some of the songs on Definite maybe
it's much louder also. Compared today, I re-listened to those two albums because I don't really listen these days to Britpop in general anymore. It was more like a 90s thing to me. It's really, it went out of my head as soon as the 90s stopped for a reason. So I had to re-listen to, and I immediately it was so familiar to me. But what I really noticed was this is much louder. This is this Owen Morris, the guy who didn't produce but mixed that album, said it was the prequel. He invented the prequel, and this album when it came out was. I mean, he said something like it was 10 times louder than any other album. I doubt 10 times, but it's certainly. Maybe 20, 30, 40% louder than this album. Maybe and it's not good.
Because they also had to salvage what they could from the old sessions. I think there was a lot of tinkering about to get a mix that sounded halfway.
Yes.
Right.
I think Stephen Street is the better producer. This is the better produced album. When I was young in the 90s, I said this is my favorite production, and I really like those loud, bonehead and those barré chords. I really listened to them with headphones at maximum volume, and I probably destroyed my ears from that because it's also so that the frequencies are so high. There's just middle and high. There's no bass, and I really loved that. But the older you get, I'm becoming an old bloke, and now it's so loud. And now I'm really into those very intelligently crafted little songs. I'm much more into the instrumentation, the arrangements also on this album. But back then, when you're young, you're in your punk phase, and this was my punk record. This was my Nevermind the Bollocks, I would say. So for me, it's a win for Blur. For you?
For me too.
Okay, so 2-0 for both of us. What was
drenched in guitars and. Yeah. That makes it sometimes sound a little bit heavy-handed, to be honest.
Yes, at least this track, I would say.
Yeah.
Next we have Live Forever versus End of a Century.
That's two Britpop anthems fighting each other here. Wow.
For me it's easy. For me it's very obvious, but I'm curious what you have to say.
Wow. I never really thought about these two songs in opposition to each other before now.
Who has thought about it?
Yeah. But this is a point for Oasis for me.
Yeah, obviously this is my favorite Oasis song. I think this is, you can't say something's objectively good or the best, but I would say 90% of all Oasis fans and even Blur fans have to admit that this is probably Noel's finest moment, or one of his finest moments. I once ranked my favorite, I think top 50 favorite Oasis songs, and this came out number 1. So it's End of a Century is one of the best tracks on Parklife, but it's still forever.
End of a Century is a great track. To me, there always was also a bit of a Bowie vibe going on this track, a little bit.
The Ziggy Stardust phase, maybe.
Yeah, maybe, or Hunky Dory, something like that. But Live Forever just is a larger than life anthem.
You know, it's like Forever doesn't win against End of a Century, then Oasis will never win any duel here. So it has to. I think it has to be Live Forever.
Yeah.
So next is much more difficult for me, at least. Up in the Sky versus Parklife. 2 tracks that fans of both groups, I think, really like, but I was never particularly a fan of any of those songs. I'm a bit underwhelmed by both songs. I know Parklife is a big anthem. It's one of the top 20 Britpop anthems, probably, in the league of common people or something like that. But not for me, on a personal level. The talking bit, I think Phil Daniels, who's an actor from Quadrophenia and things like that. It's not for me, the talking. And it's again this a funny story, a funny vignette Damon Albarn wrote about life in Britain, middle class or working class life in Britain, and it doesn't feel like something he really experienced or any feelings, any true emotions. It's a bit empty to me.
Maybe it's almost like a caricature of Englishness, maybe.
But I think it's also on Modern Life is Rubbish there was a Blur song which was also a single, Sunday Sunday.
Yeah.
And I think it's a rewrite of Sunday Sunday, and I prefer Sunday Sunday. Oasis on this album, they couldn't yet, there was no possibility that they would make rewrites. On later albums they would make lots of rewrites of older songs, but here they can't make any rewrites, so it's a bit unfair.
It's all fresh, or maybe as some critics always said it's all a rip-off. It's all a rip-off of something. This pairing hurts me a little bit because Up in the Sky is one of my favorites on Definitely Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah,
I know
many
people like it.
It's objectively speaking, it's probably not much of a song. It's just built around this repetitive guitar lick.
Inspired, it's from Paperback Writer. This is 4 songs in, and this is the first Beatle. People always say, also already back then, that they took everything from the Beatles. But we're 4 songs in, and this is the first Beatle nick on the album.
Yeah.
It's not admitted that it's the Paperback Writer thing.
I never heard too much of this supposedly strong Beatles influence on early Oasis, to be honest. But yeah, this is Paperback Writer indeed. But I like songs that use a catchy, repetitive guitar lick, so it speaks to me. But I'm also a huge fan of Parklife. It's more about lyrics, maybe, or maybe you have to live in England to get all of this. But in direct comparison, at the end of the day, I think I'll go with Parklife.
For me, this is very difficult. I can't really decide. I will go with the song that I'm more in the mood for at this moment, but it's not a definitive answer from me. I go with Parklife. Although I criticized the song 5 minutes ago.
You surprised me.
But Up in the Sky it's a bit too repetitive. I like repetitive drony music, but from bands that are supposed to do this kind of music, I don't think Oasis are. I don't want my Oasis to be like one chord. I think it's really cheap. I know there's a chorus with different chords, but the riff and the verses, that's basically just cheap.
It's quite simple. It's a simple rock song.
So I'm with. So I'm a big Oasis fan, but right now it's 3-1 for Blur. So I hope my boys will make some points. We'll catch up. Next round is, and now I'm a bit more optimistic for finally Oasis catching up. Colombia versus Bank Holiday.
Everybody likes a bank holiday.
But not the song. But you go first.
This is one of the oddball tracks on Parklife. Bank Holiday, sudden, more or less punkish, fast, snotty, maybe even almost filler track. Lots of energy, however. Colombia, on the other hand, is I think over 6 minutes long.
Yes.
It's Oasis' attempt to have something more groove.
Yes.
Oriented. I think they channeled maybe the Happy Mondays or things like that. That's the Manchester sound. Stone Roses, most of all, right? Yeah. But I never liked Colombia, and I never liked that track. It's too long. It doesn't go anywhere for me, and I like Oasis if they do this kind of pop rock style, but I think they are not the best band for sort of dance grooves. So even though Bank Holiday is really not a very important track maybe, but I like this short outburst of energy more than Colombia, to be honest.
For me, it's clearly Colombia.
I know it's a fan favorite.
I'm a living contradiction because 2 minutes ago I said about Up in the Sky, I don't like Oasis to be drony and always repeating the same chord structure. And Colombia is 6 minutes of just 3 chords.
Right.
But here I love it. I think it's the only time when Oasis did attempt something danceable that actually works. I mean, I don't know if you can really dance to it. I don't know if is it something that in the clubs, you're a DJ or you're something, is it something that would work? It's really, I think with this track it's really hard. What do you play before that and what do you play after that? It doesn't really fit in it.
Nowadays it probably wouldn't work.
Nowadays,
but I think in the
90s,
this probably would have been danceable material in some clubs.
After 10 beers when everybody is in the... Okay.
If you listen to it now, it's a bit plodding.
But
it's all a bit slow.
I loved about this song, I still love about this song. To me, it's not a dance song, it was like I'm dancing. It was this was a headphones thing to me. This is more, I saw it more like a psychedelic song in the sense that you can get really lost into it. And this is this drony thing that I like, it's not like Spaceman 3 level of where it's really... It really doesn't go anywhere, but I think this song has a kind of dynamic, the lead guitar parts, they go in and out in an interesting way. It's also a song that stirred up some controversy because Liam always claimed that he wrote, and this would have been his first songwriting contribution if it's true, he wrote the chorus, I can't remember it now, but the chorus part, he wrote the lyrics, he said. And the rest of the song is also not from Noel. The rest of the song is by the Real People, which was a Liverpool, not very good, I think, Liverpool band that were friends with Oasis. And before the official Definitely Maybe sessions even started, they made the first demos, the first really proper professional sounding demos. This was the first time that Oasis were in the studio, and they demoed a couple of tracks, and then they made up Columbia on the spot in the studio. But the inspiration came from the Real People, the people who for nothing, they didn't really charge them money, they were just friends. They gave them this, and then the song becomes, of course, with a 10 million selling album, a huge royalty thing, and the Real People to this day, I guess, are still pissed off at Noel and Liam also. So Noel stole from both, apparently or allegedly, and I think it's a fantastic song, and I don't even have anything to say about Bank Holiday. To me, I like punk rock, but when Blur doing, this art school punk rock by Blur, that doesn't really work for me. It's always something cringe to me. When
I like it. It adds to the variety of
it's okay. I mean, we're talking about two masterpieces here, so I never want to come across like I'm dissing a track or I'm derogatory. I think those are both perfect albums, and even the lesser tracks fit in to make both albums a great album experience. So if I'm saying I don't even want to talk about Bank Holiday in the context of this contest, but not as a piece on the album. I enjoy it, of course. So next is, and now we have to be careful because we're going with the vinyl version. We said And track 6 on the vinyl is Sad Song, the vinyl only track, bonus track. And track 6 on Parklife is Bad Head.
So we have two rather quiet songs.
Yes, what's your opinion?
Against each other. I wasn't too familiar with Sad Song, so maybe that's a bit unfair. It's a beautiful track.
Yeah.
It's a pity actually it didn't feature on the official release.
Yeah.
But like a lot of those acoustic Oasis songs, it feels like a demo. It's a demo version.
It's a demo.
And
that's maybe the reason why it wasn't on the album.
Also like some of their celebrated B-sides like the Master Plan or Talk Tonight, songs like that. Fans really love them. To me they always sound a little bit unfinished if you have mostly Noel on acoustic guitar.
Well, Master Plan is a song with a big orchestra, so this is
added to, but the basic structures.
You're right.
Yeah. And I like all these songs. I really like them. Yeah. Maybe it's a bit unfair to compare them. Bad Head also is more a low-key attempt or effort. I've heard Bad Head more often than Sad Song, so it's a bit difficult to really compare them. For the time being, I'm going for Bad Head.
I have to say I love both tracks. Those are both favorites of mine from both bands. And I think those are both very personal songs for once. You know, you could say Noel Gallagher isn't really telling us much about himself apart from that fantasy, that rock and roll star fantasy, those aspirational thing, but it doesn't really tell us much about his personal life as a lyricist. And Damon Albarn, we've talked about it, you know, very unpersonal songwriting on this album, but now Bad Head and Sad Song, both very heartfelt, I think, soulful, soul-searching songs, introspective songs, and I really love this. I'm really gravitating towards very personal songwriting often. I also like, I like the extremes. I like very personal songs, and I also like I'm the Walrus kind of songs on the other end. So it's very difficult. Two favorites of mine. I'm going with Bad Head because the execution is better, because this is very delicate production, I would say, clever arrangements, the horns, is it horns? Yeah. And like I said, this is just a demo. And even when Noel played it live in 94, 95, I prefer many of those live versions by him. And later on, very interesting, this is when one of the few, if not the only songs in his solo career, when Liam Gallagher, he performed this song. So it's one of maybe it's the only occasion where Liam sings a song that initially Noel would sing. And I prefer Liam's versions. And his voice nowadays is really not good anymore. Yeah. He destroyed his voice. So if I imagine with the Liam voice of 94 this song, then we would talk about a top 10 all-time Oasis song for me, and with a better.
Yeah, they should have finished the song. Maybe arrange it a little more. Yeah. But it's
great song.
Definitely interesting to have this kind of more introspective or more personal lyricism also from Oasis.
It's interesting, so we are now 6 songs in, because I gave my vote to Bad Head, although I love Sad Song. It's 5-1 for Blur now in my ranking. I wouldn't have expected. I wouldn't expected it myself. You know, I didn't prepare it. You know, I didn't write it down which one I prefer. So it's really surprising to myself that Blur ahead of it. But that's life.
So we're coming to the second half of both albums.
And
maybe Blur is just front-loaded.
Yeah, this could be. We said we cut out Debt Collector and Far Out, although I really like Far Out, but it's just 1 minute. It's a 1 minute song.
Yes, and it's one of those little quirky things they put on here, which for some listeners maybe is irrelevant and they could have left it off. I think it adds charm to the whole thing. Yes,
absolutely, and variety. It's also one thing that Parklife is better at, and definitely maybe that it's more, it's eclectic and it's more like a ride, more ups and downs and dynamics.
Completely different things also. This is about, this is a mixed bag of sweets, and this is more or less about
a bottle of beer.
More or less one thing, which is also usual for debut albums, I guess. Most bands try it
Yeah, on a debut album, you are yourself, or you attempt to be yourself, and then you can mix it up later on. So the next song is not That Collector Far Out. The next song is To the End, big classic, I would say. And the next Oasis song is also a big classic, Supersonic. This is very interesting.
Crash of the Titans again. I mean, yeah. Supersonic is one of those examples where people often made fun of the more or less nonsensical lyrics that Oasis had, which just sounded good. That just sounded good. Yeah. There were nice rhymes that everybody could remember, but these songs are not really about anything, maybe on the surface. Whereas To the End feels like something very existential. It's a very elegant song. I like this 1960s easy listening or lounge arrangement that it's got. It's one of the most beautiful ballads by Blur for me.
Absolutely.
Supersonic is just cool, and as much as I love To the End, it's another pairing that really hurts me inside, but I give the point to Supersonic. It's one of the coolest Oasis tracks for me. It's got a lot of swagger, as you would say. And if you want to show anybody what early Oasis was about, I would probably pick Supersonic.
Yeah.
To play.
To the End, did you know that there's a B-side version of To the End, not a B-side, on Country House, on a single Country House. I had the CD single of Country House, and the B-side was a different version of To the End, where Françoise Hardy, who died this week. I think she died 3 or 4 days ago.
That's true, yeah.
And she sings the French background vocals. There are French background vocals also on this version, but on this B-side version, she sings those lyrics, and I think she even there's more French parts on the B-side version, and I actually prefer the B-side version.
I'm not sure on the album. Is it someone from Stereolab?
I don't know.
I'm not 100% sure.
I'm not sure who sings it on the album version. But yeah, if you don't know it, check out the Françoise. That's also the reason there are very famous photos from the era of Blur with Françoise Hardy. Those are from those sessions, I guess. Which were 1 year later. That was 1995 for the Country House B-side. So Blur really tried everything to have Country House at number 1 versus Roll With It. But I'm also going with Supersonic. I agree with everything you said. I think this is one of the best ballads Blur ever did, and it's really a great song. It's a bit, on Pulp's big album, Different Class, there's a song called Something Changed, which is one of my favorite Pulp songs. And I think those are like relatives, those two songs, and very this French feeling. And I'm a Francophile, and it's my favorite holiday country is France. And also in my YouTube statistics, I don't know about your YouTube statistics, but in my YouTube statistics, France is always in the top 5 countries of people watching my videos for whatever reason. I don't know why. So I'm a big fan of a Frenchy kind of Britpop song, but I'm going for Supersonic, because Supersonic is according to my ranking that I did 1 year ago, my favorite Oasis songs. It's my 3rd favorite Oasis song. And I also agree with everything you said, the swagger, and it's a slow motion rock song. It would be natural to do it not much faster, then you end up with a song like Bank Holiday, but to do it a bit
I mentioned it in the hands of early Supergrass.
That would be the logical thing for such a song, would be to make it
super fast
and like song 2, for example. But that's also the reason why the live versions Oasis did of Supersonic never really were that good, because it was so natural to do it faster, and the live versions are always faster. But it's this slow motion feel that the song has that's also kind of psychedelic. So I really like Supersonic, and I love the nonsense lyrics.
Yeah, it's really cool.
I don't like
just a cool track.
Sometimes nonsense lyrics are just rubbish, but there's a way to make nonsense lyrics that are really like poems, and I think more often gets underestimated in this phase, at least as a lyricist.
Best use of the word helicopter in any rock song.
Many words in the song, best use ever. Alka-Seltzer, BMW, yellow. Even the word yellow, the Yellow Submarine is the best use of the word Yellow Submarine, including the Beatles song.
They just sneaked it in there.
The wordplay doesn't mean anything, obviously, but it's a fantastic song. And the waterfall bit, it's also so strange, and it's so imaginative. It's so. When I listened to this song when I was 15 years old or something like that, I always imagined a guy sitting beside a waterfall. It evokes the images. It's really like a fantasy movie. Next up we have Point to Supersonic.
London Loves versus
Bring It On
Bring It On Down. Bring It On Down. That's the one song I always forget about.
Bring It On Down?
Yes.
Okay.
It's the most up-tempo, I think.
Yeah.
On the album, I like up-tempo. But to be honest, this is the one I would most consider as filler. Definitely, maybe. I'm not a huge fan of this song. When I listen to it, I enjoy it, but I've forgotten already when it finishes. London Loves, on the other hand, also is not the strongest song.
Did you know that Bring It On Down was supposed to be the debut single of Oasis?
Ooh.
So Supersonic was just a lucky accident. Maybe that's why it sounds so strange. It was never planned as a single or as a song to begin with. Oasis were in the studio in early '94, I think, with the mission to record the first single A-side. Al McGee, the label boss, told them, you have to record your single, and I want Bring It On Down. Al McGee wanted Bring It On Down, and they messed around with that song. Tony McCarroll, the drummer, didn't get it right. It's one of the more, at least for Oasis level of performances, one of the more tricky drum parts.
True.
And so they thought, what can we do in the meanwhile? And Noel Gallagher wrote on the spot in like 10 minutes in a break. The rest of the group was eating, I think, spaghetti somewhere, and then he stayed in the studio and wrote in 10 minutes. And that's also maybe why it's such a cool, imaginative song, Supersonic. He wrote it in 10 minutes, and there was a dog in the studio whose name was Elsa, and that's why I know a girl called Elsa. She's into Alka-Seltzer. It's the dog from the studio. So we wouldn't have a Supersonic with the aborted single recording sessions for Bring It On Down. And I love Bring It On Down. It's maybe the most, next to Cigarettes and Alcohol, the most working class song. It's like a mission statement. I think it's a mission statement what Oasis is about. And since I could identify with what they were about, especially at the time, I come from a working class background here in Vienna, so from Floridsdorf. The watchers don't know what Floridsdorf is, but this is like Burnage, Oasis are from the district. Oasis are from the district Burnage in Manchester, and Floridsdorf is the Burnage of Vienna, one would say. So I could identify with everything Noel had to say in this song, and with that mentality, with that. I'm the underclass, I'm the uninvited guest, but I stay till the end, and it's like I will win, and it's a bit like rock and roll style. But here I even prefer the sentiment even to rock and roll style. It's more specific in a way. So the point goes for me to Bring It On Down. Did you?
I'm still undecided. It's really tricky. As I said, I'm not.
I don't have much to say about London Loves.
Both of the songs. So nice insight into the song. Still, I'm really happy they didn't choose this as the debut single. I don't think it's a very good single.
And maybe the first dig at Blur, because there's the line in the song, "Today was just a blur," but of course it can't be a dig. Well, there wasn't yet a rivalry between the two bands when Noel wrote this song.
And also Blur weren't that big.
Yeah, it's definitely not written with that in mind, but in hindsight you could listen to it with that, it's a dig at Blur. So like with Country House and Damon Albarn, this was of course a dig at Oasis when he sang about Morning Glory in the song Country House, but whatever.
Yeah. I'm going with London Loves, but not with full conviction.
Okay, I'm going with full conviction for Bring It On Down. Next we have Cigarettes and Alcohol, the next working class hero song anthem on the album, versus Oh, Trouble in the Message Center.
Cigarettes and Alcohol probably was one of the first Oasis songs I heard. And I didn't like it. It was a terrible T-Rex ripoff, and I was a huge T-Rex fan. But I love it now. Maybe.
Very surprising.
These days, I would say it ranks as one of my favorite Oasis tracks. It's just fun, and that's what it's all about. But it's grim fun. It's about there's nothing else to do, so all we get is we just get drunk. Trouble in the Message Center is one of those quirky, smart Blur tracks. Not much to write home about, to be honest. So my point definitely goes to Cigarettes and Alcohol.
My point also goes to Cigarettes and Alcohol, but I'm, again, this was never my favorite Oasis single. I like it much more than Shaker Maker or more than Roll With It, but it's also not in my top 10 single Aces from the 90s at least. But maybe because of it's so derivative of Get It On, T-Rex. But it's also one of the most Sex Pistols sounding songs, because there was at that time Oasis were compared to Sex Pistols and Beatles. There was even the headline in Melody Maker, I think, the Sex Beatles.
Yeah.
And this is the
strange comparisons to me. I never heard it, but
it's maybe because the band in all interviews said those two groups. At that time they always said Sex Pistols and Beatles are their biggest influences. Later on it would change, at least with the Sex Pistols bit. But I was also back then already a T-Rex fan. I really like T-Rex. I really like early 70s glam rock. So I like the song, but it was never one of my all-time favorites. Trouble in the Message Center is a good song. It's a bit it's a quirky. It's almost like a Talking Head song or something like that. Yeah,
it's got a bit of an 80s new wave influence, at least.
I like it, but the point, those are two of the I get crucified by Oasis fans for saying those are two of the weaker tracks. I can't say Cigarettes and Alcohol is a weak track, but it's those
beer here.
Those are two songs that aren't really, don't mean that much in my heart to me. Although with all that working class thing I talked about, but Bring It On Down is for me the working class anthem. That's back at the time when this album came out, I didn't yet drink beer or smoke cigarettes. I never smoked cigarettes because I was 12 years old. So I never really identified with that song. So, but still, the point goes to Cigarettes and Alcohol, because it's an iconic song, and it's Cigarettes and Alcohol, for God's sake.
Everybody likes Cigarettes and Alcohol.
Yeah. No one likes Message Centers.
No, they're terrible.
Okay. So, next is Clover over Dover versus Dixie's Dinner.
Clover over Dover. Dixie's Dinner is an interesting track, because I think it changes the sound and mood a little bit on Definitely Maybe.
Yeah.
To me, and I don't mean this in a negative kind of way, it's kind of a pop rock song. Maybe this is also something that inspired Travis, at least what they tried on their debut album. I don't know if you've ever heard it, but it's a very different kind of Travis from their famous hits later on. Is the song
Fucking Up on this album? No, Neil Young is a Neil Young song, but there's a song...
All I Want to Do Is Rock, which used to have another verb.
Yeah.
That's
that album.
It's a fun track. Clover over Dover is... Comparing these is really weird. Clover over Dover has a bittersweet taste. I mean, the cliffs of Dover are associated also with suicide, of course, and there are some lines in the track that You Push Me Over. It's a wordplay. It's a bit melancholic. Both songs are not my favorites on the albums, but Clover over Dover has a beautiful arrangement. My point goes to Blur in this case.
My point also goes to Blur. Clover over Dover is one of the Dark Horse tracks. It's one of my favorites of the not talked about tracks on Parklife. I always love this song. The Melancholy. Again, it's one of the few in Damon Albarn songs in that phase that aren't just funny and talking about British daily life. This is more deep and it's about depression, I would say, or something like that, or that you lost someone you were in love with. It's about something like that. And very drastic with suicide, but it's a wonderful melody, and the instrumentation, the guitar licks by Graham Coxon, really a fantastic song. Dixie's Dinner is, that's the Ringo song. Back in that phase, Oasis always had one Ringo song on each album. She's Electric on Morning Glory.
It's a blueprint for She's Electric, but She's Electric is a whole lot better for me.
But Dixie's Dinner, did you know it's about a singer they were friends with from a band called Smaller, and the singer, the name of the singer was Dixie. And Dixie from Smaller wrote a revenge song called Knowles Knows. So that's the most interesting anecdote about the song.
I have to check out that song.
No, it's not that good. Yeah. But Dixie's Dinner is a fun song, but it's always the better song. That's
definitely. Yeah.
But the best use of the word lasagne in a British rock song exists I would say. Next is Magic America versus Slide Away. This should be easy. This should be you go first.
Because it's Magic America, not Magic America. I like the lyrics, bit of an ironic or sarcastic look at America. But the song is one of the weaker tracks on Parklife, and this is the moment where there are a bit too many la la las for me in their songs. I mean, Blur liked their la la las. At least they did a lot of those choruses in the mid '90s, and sometimes it's very effective and catchy. But in Magic America, it gets to a point where I'm like, okay, that's enough now. Slide Away is a precursor to the huge anthems, what they would do on What's the Story, Morning Glory. It's a fantastic track. So a clear point for Oasis for me. I think also one of Liam's best vocal performances. He never sounded better like in the early years. And we needed to take a little break. It's summer and it's football time.
We watched Turkey, Georgia with hundreds of, no, not hundreds, with at least 20 Turkish fans.
Yes.
And it was really exciting. But I'm a bit, I have a soft spot for Georgia, so I had to be very quiet. I couldn't show my affiliation with Georgia. That would have been maybe a bit dangerous. Because the playmaker of Georgia is from my team, from Sturm Graz. That's the reason why. Yeah. My heart beats for
Georgia on your mind. Yeah. What's your verdict? Sorry. What's your verdict on Slide Away versus Magic America?
Of course, the point goes to Slide Away. One of the best Oasis songs, one of the best Noel Gallagher written songs ever, and I agree with you. Maybe not the best, but for me, one of the 5 best vocal performances in the studio by Liam, and there's a live version out there also on YouTube of Slide Away. That is my all-time favorite Liam vocal performance. That was I know this live version since the 90s because it was on a VHS, the official live VHS of Oasis back then, called another pun, Live by the Sea or Live by the Sea, because Live by the Sea is from a lyric from an Oasis song, but it's also Live by the Sea. That was the name of the VHS. I think it was a concert in Southend, and the live version of Slide Away from that concert, that's my all-time favorite Oasis live performance and my all-time favorite Liam Gallagher vocal performance. So the studio version isn't really that good compared with that, and it's also the only surviving song from the Dave Batchelor session, so it's a bit of an outlier. Okay. It's a bit, the Oasis re-recorded, we touched on this very shortly at the beginning of the video, but they re-recorded most of the album with Mark Coyle, their live engineer, and then Owen Morris mixed it. But Dave Batchelor initially recorded the album, or was intended to record the album, and he produced Slide Away. And you can hear his approach and why Oasis didn't really gel with his approach, because he was for a separation of the musicians, so that everyone, or not everyone, but most, like maybe a take with the drummer and the bass player, then one guitar, next guitar, vocals, and Oasis wanted to record more live. And Slide Away is maybe one of the, or it's not, maybe it's the only song where this is apparent, this different recording technique. So I'm much more a fan of the live version. So that was Slide Away versus Magic America. Magic America, by the way, I think is a nice song, but it has, the thing is, it goes against Slide Away, and Slide Away is such an iconic classic to me. But Magic America, nothing wrong with the song. Kind of funny lyrics, critique of the American way of life, and the way some Europeans, or in this song British people, maybe aspire to that American way of life, and clearly a critique of the consumerism and everything American.
I think it depicts this ambivalent.
And it's also this Blur theme at that time of being very European. It's a bit like the Style Council in the 80s wanted to be this European, this cosmopolitan. France, Italy, Spain, Greece, all those countries turn up in the song's lyrics, and it's a bit this we are a European band thing there.
But still always with one eye on America, and Blur would...
Later on they would become very pavement influenced.
Okay.
So the next one is, I have to look, it's getting late. Married with Children, Married with Children versus Jubilee.
Tougher than Georgia versus Turkey. Two underdogs, maybe.
Yes.
Also. Jubilee is another nice track. I really think it's enjoyable, but to be honest, I don't have too much to say about it.
Me too.
Maybe the same goes for Married with Children, but I mean, Married with Children is officially the closing track on Definitely Maybe, and I think it's a very charming closing track.
Yeah.
Maybe nothing too special, very low-key.
I think after all the noise, 45 minutes of noise, this quiet approach, this demo, this is like sad song, like an acoustic demo. I think it was even recorded, not in a studio, but in someone's flat, just, as a demo in someone's flat, in a bedroom or something like that. And that's really the charm of it, after that assault, that the album is the sonic assault, that's nice. And the live versions mostly were the style of a song like Cigarettes and Alcohol or Bring It On Down, so that the usual version, so it's just a demo for a song that was intended as a rock song, like all the others, but I think it was a wise decision for the album closer to change it up a bit with this simple reduced track.
This song sounds like the cover image looks just a few blokes sitting on a couch having a glass of red wine. Actually, it wasn't really red wine on the cover photo. I read it up, smartest that I am. They didn't really use red wine, but that's, to me, that's...
Maybe Bonehead didn't want to clean up after that.
Probably, yes.
Because this is the living room of Bonehead.
They used something else that looks better on the photograph, that has a better red, apparently. But back to the song, so that sounds really like, friends hanging around in the living room playing guitar. And I also like the tongue-in-cheek lyrics.
Do you know what the inspiration was of that song?
No, not in detail.
The girlfriend, already at that time ex-girlfriend of Noel, those were like her last words to him while she leaves him. Yeah, while she leaves him, that he's so sarcastic and that he's an egotist. All the things that are true. The thing, it's Noel. Many people thought it's about Liam and that it's one of those sardonic Noel chaps at Liam, that he has to sing a song that's about what an asshole he is, but it's even more. That's also charming. No, it's not about Liam. It could also be read about Liam, but it's really self-deprecating sense of humor to to admit to oneself, my girlfriend said that I'm this sarcastic asshole, and I'm writing a song about it. So it's a nice way of coping with that maybe true accusation.
Probably yes. And then Jubilee is nice indie pop, but probably it's not so surprising because I've been talking so much about it already now. In this pairing, I'm a fan of Married with Children.
Me too. I think Jubilee is a bit in the vein of Bank Holiday. It's like two songs that are sometimes confused with each other.
Yeah.
It's also
a bit of a punk edge. Yeah.
And I really like the flavor, the charm, like you said, of Married with Children. It's a great track. But we still have one on the Blur album left. This is a low. We don't do lot 105 because, like we said, it's like a bonus track, like a Her Majesty. We're doing This Is a Low versus Whatever, which was the single that came out like 3 months after the album was released as a standalone single. So I think that's an interesting pairing because those are two. There aren't really many songs that are in the same vein on both albums, but these are two anthems, like acoustic guitar-based anthems, so maybe comparable songs for once. What's your opinion on This Is a Low, sweeping big songs? This Is a Low versus Whatever.
Yeah. This Is a Low is a really captivating track, very interesting in terms of songwriting. Probably one of the most interesting songs on the whole album. With this one, I feel there's a little bit of maybe a David Bowie influence, but maybe it's just me. I don't know why I always associate it with David Bowie. Whereas Whatever is kind of an acoustic pop song. It's
precursor to Wonderwall, maybe.
Yeah, right, with the strings and...
This is the first clearly Beatles song, because people, I think also you said, I don't know why they always get compared with the Beatles on this album, but you're right, definitely maybe at first glance isn't really very Beatly, but Whatever is very
Whatever is pure Beatles pop.
It's more Beatly than the Beatles songs that came out in that phase, Free as a Bird, a few months after Whatever. The Beatles released Free as a Bird, but Whatever sounds much more Beatly than Free as a Bird.
Right. It's easy on the ears, it's ear candy, it's you can sing along to it. So, I'm torn. It's really difficult because usually I like songs that are a bit less conventional, so I should be a huge fan of This Is a Low.
You're the rock guy.
I am a fan of This Is a Low, but Whatever just gets me on, it just touches my pop nerve.
Tearjerker.
And in direct comparison, in the mood that I am in now, I will give the point to Whatever. Even though it's simply one of those pop songs that is based on the famous canon by Pachelbel, which is Baroque classical music. You find that a lot. It's very popular in pop music. This kind of chord progression. You have it with terrible songs like Aerosmith's.
Is this the chord progression, or is this the guitar isn't tuned, and I haven't played guitar in 10 years? It's just a guitar that lies around here in this office. Is this the chord progression of Whatever? No, it's wrong.
Yeah, close.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I forgot it. For me, it is difficult to say which one I prefer, because This Is a Low is clearly one of the highlights of Parklife. It's a great closing number if you discount lot 105. It's really difficult. But I'm with you here on an emotional level. Whatever, to me, it's the emotion votes for Whatever. This Is a Low is probably the better song from a songwriting perspective. It's more original, as you said. Whatever is the first of very conventional streamlined We Want to Be the Beatles of the 90s songs by Oasis. So maybe it's the start of something that they shouldn't have started with. but I'm going with whatever. It's also because of the memories. I have more sentimental memories, I think, with whatever than the way that I even found the whatever single. Because, like I said in the beginning, Oasis, Blur were huge bands in Britain, biggest bands in the country at the time. Yeah. But in Austria, they were still kind of indie bands. Didn't chart very high, if at all. So it was, and this was pre-internet, so it was very difficult to get the physical things. Yeah. And I remember that with a schoolmate of mine who was also an Oasis fan, we went to, there was a big record shop in Vienna, Virgin Megastore. And I always wanted to have the whatever single, and he too. And I was first, I was at the O section, rock O, and I browsed through the Oasis CDs, and then that was the whatever single, and I was like, I have it, and you don't get it. There was only one whatever single maybe in Austria in the physical store. And I nicked it from him. Yeah. It was an evil bastard. When
we still bought CD singles.
Yes. And the B-sides were also excellent on that single. The B-sides on the whatever single. Slide Away was one of the B-sides. But the B-sides that only were the whatever single, It's Good to Be Free and Half the World Away. Two brilliant B-sides, I would say. So that was it.
I mean, at the end of the day, probably everybody prefers something that makes you feel good instead of something that makes you feel low.
Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
So how do we wrap this up? I have lost count, so we have when I'm editing the video, I will make inserts, so you already seen these inserts. We have totally forgotten which album won for each of us, but I think we both have general feelings which album we prefer. It could be that one album maybe won track by track, but still doesn't mean you prefer that album to the other album. I think it's not that easy. It's not that mathematics.
There's a difference between comparing single tracks to each other.
Yeah, it's also about the flow of the album and also the artwork. Everything has to do with it. And if I have to choose one album, of course, I'm a big Oasis fan. This is my album. It could be that Blur have won the track versus track, I don't know, but as an album, as a statement, as something that was important to me when I was a teenager, definitely maybe wins, but Parklife is to me the best. Those are the two best albums of both bands, I would say, for me. And I really love Parklife. It's a masterpiece, but definitely maybe it's the album I would choose as the one I prefer. It's in when I made a video, my top 10 favorite albums of all time. It was the only album from the 90s in there. It was number 10, I think. Yeah.
Right.
For you?
In terms of albums, in terms of flow, it always depends on what you want from an album. I mean, definitely Maybe is very unified. It has mostly one sound that you either like or you don't like. Whereas Parklife is maybe a bit all over the place. Yeah. It sounds like they had the plan to really, with more or less each track, to go stylistically somewhere completely different. Yeah. But usually I like variety, so for me Parklife as an album is actually the better album.
You're wrong, of course.
Of course, but only if you're an Oasis fan who doesn't know a lot about variety in music.
You're not wrong, because this album won the Brit Awards in '95. They chose the best British album of the year.
Right, they
won. They won, and Oasis lost. The year after Oasis won and Blur lost. Yeah. So.
But then again, what do I know about Oasis? Because my favorite Oasis album, and I won't disclose here which one, but my favorite Oasis album is one of their least popular albums
ever. I'm pretty sure Standing on the Shoulder, you are Standing on the Shoulder guy. You're psychedelic guy. I think it's Standing on the Shoulder of Chimes.
Yes.
I hate this album. It's my least favorite Oasis album.
It's an overlooked masterpiece.
Yeah, I hate it. You know, the only song. No, I don't want to get into it. It's a subject for a different time, for a different video. Maybe we'll do more videos in the future. Maybe a discussion about standing on the shoulder of giants will be a future video. So, thank you very much for your time, Murdock, and for your time and for watching. And yeah, that's it.
Right. Let us know what your memories are with those albums.